Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today, 3:30, Kurt Schlichter joins us. We'll talk to him about the new push to fund Ukraine and the White House invitation for Zelenskyy to visit us yet again, hat in hand. Ilya Shapiro joins us at 4 o'clock. We'll talk to him about all of the anti-Semitism on these college campuses around the country. What to do. And then 5 o'clock today, Chuck Ross joins us from the Washington Free Beacon with more on how your government is spending your money. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
Ministerio de Turismo y Deporte, afuera. Ministerio de Cultura, afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera. Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera.
That's the new president of Argentina in a viral video some time ago talking about all of the cabinet agencies he would eliminate the moment he became the president of Argentina. Afuera, afuera, afuera. Just throwing the names of all of these agencies to the ground in what looks like just a dream here in the United States of America. Can some politician come along, please, and eliminate agency after agency after agency? Afuera, afuera, afuera. Well, Milei's doing it, and he wasted no time. So he just became president of Argentina. It's funny, I was getting messages this weekend from my dear uncle and my aunt. They were in Argentina. It just so happens, not for the presidential inauguration, but because they were there for a family member. My cousin had she's a very talented field hockey player, and she was there participating in a tournament there, and they were there to support her. So they happened to be staying in a nice hotel in Buenos Aires, and it was apparently nice enough that Milei was also, I think, staying in the same place because they kept running into him in the hotel all weekend. I was getting pictures of my aunt and my uncle standing, literally posing with Milei. They're all smiling together, and I couldn't believe it. And he was telling me, he was like, yeah, it's pretty humble. He was coming and going in a Volkswagen Passat. That's how he was arriving at the hotel, a man of the people. And I understand he rode to the inauguration on horseback. So cool. So he gets there, got to the inauguration this weekend. The outgoing regime was present, but unhappy that Milei was taking over. And afuera, afuera, afuera. He really did eliminate everything. Did you see this? On the very first day that he had in office, on Sunday, Breitbart News here with the report. Argentine President Javier Milei used his first executive action in the top office on Sunday to dramatically rearrange the federal executive branch. He reduced the number of cabinet-level ministries from 18 to 9. They have 18 cabinet-level ministries. He canned 9 of them on day one in office. How exciting is this? Isn't that great? Many of the ministries eliminated were folded into new offices. Okay, so not entirely removing that function from the government. Their functions will continue with a much smaller office and reduced staff. 3 ministries, the General Ministry, the Office of Media and Communications, and the Legal and Technical Office, were elevated to cabinet level. Milei put the General Ministry in the hands of his sister and campaign fixture, Karina, which required the signing of a separate executive order to undo limitations on appointing family members to top positions. The president, who campaigned as a small government, anti-socialist libertarian, made the elimination of at least half of the government's top ministries a core campaign promise throughout 2023. In one of his most popular public appearances, he explained his plan by scratching ministries out of a large flowchart of the federal government one by one, describing many as ranging from useless to harmful. Yeah, at one point, he talks about the Ministry of Education, and he says, propaganda, he yells out in Spanish. Isn't this the best?
Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera, aunque te resistas. Vamos a seguir por acá. Ministerio de Ciencia y Tecnología e Innovación. Algo bien del sector privado. Nada bueno salió del sector público. ¡Afuera!
Afuera! So he's getting rid of these offices one by one. He published a photo of his cabinet in the presidential offices in the early morning hours of Monday alongside his campaign slogan. Ready for the slogan? Let me see if I can get this right. It's Viva la Libertad, carajo, which roughly translates to long live liberty, damn it. The 9 cabinet-level ministries in the Argentine federal government are now the Ministry of the Interior, foreign relations, defense, economics, infrastructure, justice, security, health, and human capital. Let's see here. The eliminated ministries are officially part of other offices, likely resulting in the elimination of the jobs of those leading the ministries and many of the bureaucrats. The new Ministry of Human Capital absorbed the following ministries: education, labor, employment, social security, culture, social development, women, gender, and diversity. They've all been eliminated. All these agencies have been eliminated or folded in and made much smaller into this Ministry of Human Capital. The Ministry of the Interior absorbed the following cabinet agencies: sport, tourism, environment, sustainable development, and then you've got the Ministry of Infrastructure, which absorbed the Ministry of Transport. That's Pete Buttigieg's equivalent agency in Argentina. Public Works, and Territorial Development and Habitat. The cabinet chief will control the former Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation, while a separate Ministry of Justice and Human Rights will now simply be a part of the greater Justice Ministry. So Milei, in other words, Milei is moving very quickly on day one, as he promised. That's nice to see. During his campaign, to slash as much of the government as he's humanly capable of doing. And you may have noticed early in the piece, I said that he brought his sister in. His sister is helping to lead the government. And obviously, normally one of the things that you kind of reflexively frown upon. Ooh, don't bring a family member in. But I don't know. This guy, I'm surprised he's traveling around with a Volkswagen. There are so many people in around the institutions of that government who surely do not want to see him in that job. I would imagine it's hard to find people you can trust to assist you in your agenda. So maybe that's the rationale for why he brought his sister in. Interesting dude. Very interesting dude. So that's what he's trying to do in Argentina. By the way, you can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. You can join the program and give us your thoughts on what's going on. We're also watching really closely the breaking news this afternoon that the special counsel here in the United States, not in Argentina, Jack Smith, has decided to try and accelerate Donald Trump's appeal process up to the United States Supreme Court and just skip all of the appeals process. Now, why is he doing that? Why does he want to put all of this in front of the Supreme Court immediately? Well, it's interesting. So here's what we know. The Jack Smith case is all about Donald Trump, and he tried to steal the election, and on and on and on. And Trump has been making the case that actually you can't prosecute me for any of this. Because, one, you're trying to prosecute me for doing things that I was legally allowed to and capable of doing as president of the United States. Your say-so is irrelevant here. I have immunity on the basis of the fact that I had a job to do. I had a job to do. And so you are going after me for nothing. This is nonsense. Additionally, Trump he faced an impeachment process. Do you remember after January 6, 2021, Trump was subjected to an impeachment by the United States Congress, by the Democrats? And what happened? He was acquitted in that case. He was acquitted by the United States Senate. So what we're looking at is Jack Smith trying to now prosecute him for something that was already addressed through the powers that the founders gave the United States Congress when it came to handling the president of the United States. So Trump has been filing appeals on this. And the effect of those appeals, as you would expect in a court process, it slows things down. So if somebody files an appeal like this, it slows the court proceedings down. Now, Jack Smith's goal has been to rush to get this particular trial going right before the election. They're hoping to launch in March. The judge he's got in this case, Tanya Chutkan, who hates Trump, they want to get all of this going in March. But Trump is appealing it, saying, "Hey, look, I've got reasonable immunity that needs to be considered here," and so it could have the effect of slowing the trial down. And this is what Jack Smith is trying to stop here. Jack Smith does not want to slow the trial down. He does not want it to take place after the election. He's so scared of that. Why? Because he's meddling in the election. That's the whole point. So he's panicking here that Donald Trump is outmaneuvering him. Let me quote for you from the New York Times this afternoon. They write the general news item on this subject. Special counsel asks Supreme Court to decide whether Trump is immune from prosecution. Jack Smith, the special counsel prosecuting former President Donald J. Trump on charges of plotting to overturn the 2020 election, asked the Supreme Court on Monday to rule on Mr. Trump's argument that he is immune from prosecution. The request was unusual in two ways. Mr. Smith asked the justices to rule before an appeals court acted, and he urged them to move with exceptional speed. This case presents a fundamental question at the heart of our democracy, Mr. Smith wrote. Whether a former president is absolutely immune from federal prosecution for crimes while committed in office, or is constitutionally protected from federal prosecution when he has been impeached but not convicted before the criminal proceedings begin. It's some weaselly wording on Smith's part. He was not merely not convicted, he was acquitted in the United States Senate. But he doesn't say that. He added that speed was of the essence, as Mr. Trump's appeal of a trial judge's ruling rejecting his claim of immunity suspends the trial of the charges against him. The trial is scheduled to begin on March 4th in federal district court in Washington. The judge, Tanya S. Chutkan, rejected Mr. Trump's sweeping claims that he enjoyed absolute immunity from the election interference indictment because it was based on actions he took while he was in office. In her ruling, she condemned his attempts to, quote, usurp the reins of government, end quote, and said there was nothing in the law, the Constitution, or American history supporting the proposition that a former president should not be bound by the federal criminal law. Mr. Trump appealed the decision to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. He also asked Judge Chutkan to freeze the election interference case in its entirety until the appeal was resolved. Now, in his Supreme Court brief, Mr. Smith conceded that the election case could not be decided until after the appeal of the immunity was resolved. On Sunday, his team filed papers to Judge Chutkan asking her to keep the March 4th trial date and saying she could still work on certain aspects of the case, even as the appeal was being heard. Winning the appeal of the immunity decision was only one of Mr. Trump's goals in challenging the decision. All along, he and his lawyers have had an alternative strategy to delay the election interference trial for as long as possible. If the trial were to be put off until the 2024 election and Mr. Trump were to win, he could have his attorney general simply dismiss the charges. Holding a trial after the presidential race would also mean that voters would never hear any of the evidence that prosecutors have collected about Mr. Trump's expansive efforts to reverse the results of the last election before weighing in on whether to reelect him. Look at the Times, so concerned that voters won't be equipped with all the information necessary to render a judgment about Trump. What more do they need? What more do they need to render a decision about Trump? Same paper that was involved in a media-wide effort to stop the American public from knowing about the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop and the Biden family business dealings. Preposterous. So Smith is saying, please, 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 Supreme Court, intervene. Rush this along, this appeal. Now, wouldn't it be great if the court came back and they're like, yeah, Trump does have immunity. they just instantly say, and now we'll see. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe it will. Maybe it will. Be pretty funny. Just nip this thing right in the bud. Maybe the court leaps all over it. But for now, Jack Smith's goal is he wants this trial to start in March. And why does he want it to start in March? Blatant election interference. The legal experts are weighing in on this, and they see the same thing I'm seeing here. More on that in just a moment. But first, all right, so this special counsel fellow, this clown, Jack Smith, is saying he'd like to speed along Trump's appeal process on whether or not he has any sort of immunity, and he's appealing directly to the United States Supreme Court. Now, remember the context for all this. Jack Smith is criminalizing Trump for things that he said. He's the speech police. He doesn't care about the First Amendment. He's going to prosecute and try and imprison Trump for his use of the First Amendment. Additionally, he's going after your First Amendment rights. Remember, he is seeking information on anybody who's ever liked, shared, retweeted, or commented on a Trump tweet. So it's not like he's out of control or anything. And here he is going to the court saying, hey, quickly, short circuit the appeal process here so I can get back to having a March trial. Now, Byron York over at the Washington Examiner asks this question just in the last 15 minutes. He said, did I miss something? In the Supreme Court request, Jack Smith repeatedly says it's super important Trump immunity issue is decided quickly. But he doesn't say why it must be decided quickly. Obviously, that is so Trump can be tried, convicted, and sentenced before a 2024 election. Why doesn't he explicitly say so? Because it would be too obvious. It's too on the nose to say that he's meddling in the 2024 election, trying to get him arrested and convicted and thrown behind bars before the 2024 election. Additionally, Jonathan Turley is reacting to this afternoon. He said the only reason for this petition is to seek to guarantee a trial of Trump and possible conviction before the election. The matter is currently before the D.C. Circuit, which is viewed as a favorable court for Smith. However, Smith is trying to avoid any delay in the March trial date, set to begin the day before Super Tuesday. The Supreme Court may not view a trial of Trump during the campaign to be as motivating or urgent as does Smith. This is a novel legal argument, meaning never made before, that the court would ordinarily prefer to hear the views from the appellate judges. So why should the Supreme Court cut this off right now? Really? Because you want to meddle with the election? That's your desire? Tough. So we'll see what the court does with it. Mike Davis points this out today from the Article 3 Project. Biden's special counsel Jack Smith made an extraordinary request. He asked the Supreme Court to bypass the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, skip the normal Supreme Court briefing, end argument timelines, and immediately decide whether Trump enjoys presidential immunity. This is a legal Hail Mary by Jack Smith. He is desperate to keep an unreasonably, unconstitutionally expedited March trial date. After waiting 30 months to bring these unprecedented and political charges and not giving the defendant adequate time to get through 13 million pages of documents, nor enough time to prepare for hundreds of potential witnesses, while Trump's sitting through an extensive, bogus New York civil fraud trial right now to bankrupt him? Knowing Jack Smith's March trial will force Trump to sit in a D.C. courtroom for months instead of being on the campaign trail. To secure a guilty verdict from a D.C. jury pool that voted 95% against Trump, and a conviction from D.C. Obama Judge Tanya Chutkan, who is hell-bent on imprisoning Trump before the election. During this time, Trump must sit through 3 other back-to-back, even overlapping criminal trials, including another by Jack Smith, to throw him in prison for 700 years. There is no reason Jack Smith's D.C. trial can't wait until after the election. This is blatant election interference. Blatant election interference. Meanwhile, what else is Washington doing? Oh, look, they want to spend more money on Ukraine. Kurt Schlichter joins us just moments from now. We'll discuss whether or not that's a bad idea or a horrible idea. Well, good afternoon to you. 3:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we'll be joined by Ilya Shapiro at 4 o'clock as all of these big-time college campuses have decided to go full anti-Semite very publicly. He'll react to that. Then Chuck Ross, that is with us at 5 o'clock today from the Washington Free Beacon. The Biden administration spending a bunch of your money on really stupid things, and he's got the update on that. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. NBC News headline, one of many, Zelenskyy pleads for U.S. aid to Ukraine ahead of Tuesday White House meeting. That's right. Vladimir Zelenskyy is coming back to the United States yet again to meet with Joe Biden at the White House, yet again at Biden's invitation, yet again in order to give Zelenskyy more money and place pressure on Congress for that. Is that a good idea? Should we give Ukraine more money than we've given to Israel over the last 75 years? For more on this, let's bring in Kurt Schlichter, a Townhall Senior Columnist, retired Infantry Army Colonel, and the author of the book We'll Be Back, The Fall and Rise of America. Kurt, great to have you with us, sir.
Hey, great to be here.
Well, Biden has Zelenskyy swinging back to the White House. It's an unusual thing. He sends the invite so he can give him the cash?
Look, I think Zelenskyy gets a bum rap from a lot of conservatives who are angry about American policy. Zelensky's doing what he needs to do for his country, which is not America, and we need to remember that. I went and trained Ukrainians. I worked with them. when I was on active duty, and I respect them. They're doing what they have to do for their country. But Vince, we got to do what's right for ours.
Yeah.
And what's right for ours, I'm not sure it's giving everything that this guy wants to him, especially when our own border is wide open.
Yeah, no question. And we're looking at just like giving him a crap ton of money. I mean, we really are giving them unbelievable amounts of money, and also there's been no accountability for that. I understand if I'm Vladimir Zelenskyy or I'm any Ukrainian official, I'm trying to get money wherever I can. I'm trying to get weapons wherever I can to help me prosecute this war. But the reality here is, a ton of this cash has been pilfered. A ton of it. There's no accountability. A ton of these weapons have been misused. You know what I mean? A ton of our stockpiles have been worn out. And it's like, what are we doing to ourselves?
Well, exactly. I mean, look, the first time I went to Ukraine, some weaselly guys from the United States government had to pay off the local crime boss with a briefcase full of cash to let our plane take off. Okay, this is a country that's so corrupt, the Nigerians are like, wait a minute. Yeah. You guys have gone a step too far. I mean, and a lot of this money's disappearing, and the Ukrainians are imperfect people. Zelenskyy is, he doesn't believe in free speech and free religion the same way we do. But, his country's being invaded. He's dealing with it his way. I don't blame him. And I don't think it is immoral to help the Ukrainians. I think the Russians are in the wrong here. But, again, I'm not a Ukrainian. I'm an American. And I see 12,000 people, an army division, a day crossing our southern border. And we're throwing $100 billion at this Slavic slap fight. It's really hard to make that argument. And after almost 2 years, hey, we're not doing it anymore. So hats off to the Republicans showing a rare bit of spine. I mean, when you got Romney out there saying, you're gonna have to do something about the border, or you're never getting any money. That's saying something.
That's a sign of how bad things have gotten, isn't it? When Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney can finally say out loud, hey, the border might need to be fixed.
Yeah, finally. The friends of Ukraine are not helping themselves with their with pretending that everybody who doesn't want to write a blank check to Zelenskyy loves Putin. I particularly enjoy being told that from people who did not serve in the Cold War, which I did and millions of other Americans did, and ignoring the border. Look, as a lawyer, if I'm like graphing out the argument that, hey, we're giving a lot of money to Ukraine, but, the border's open, so we shouldn't. That's not a great logical argument, but it's a powerful political one.
Well, it's a moral one.
And it's a great question for normal people.
It's a moral one. I mean, you mentioned a moment ago,
exactly.
It's not immoral to give Ukraine money, but it is immoral to give them nearly $150 billion and then to allow your own country's border to collapse and to allow well over 10 million foreign nationals to invade it. That seems like a problem, like a huge problem.
Yeah, I'm tired of being told that anytime we pursue our own interests, we're somehow bad people. I wish Ukraine could win this war. I don't think it can for a number of reasons. But I'm more concerned with the United States of America. And, when Mitch McConnell stands up and says, our number one priority is Ukraine.
Yours. I get so ticked off when I hear this crap because so you always stop.
It is not even in my top 5. It's not in my top 10.
Yeah.
And again, I like Ukraine. I partied with those guys. I hope they win. But I'm not Ukrainian. I'm American, and I would like to think our legislators are too.
So when you heard the White House say this past week that it's Republicans who are trying to stop funding for the border, I think it was John Kirby said, I believe the words verbatim were, Joe Biden is all about border security. That's what John Kirby said out loud. Now, I'll be honest, I laughed heartily when I heard him say that, but maybe I was wrong. Is Joe Biden all about border security?
Well, look, I'm a Los Angeles trial lawyer, so I'm used to people lying to my face. But, rarely that brazenly. Yeah, the Republicans want the border wide. Well, actually, some probably do.
Some.
The reason the border is open is because the Democrat administration will not enforce the law on asylum and turn these liars and bums around. And if it did that, we wouldn't have the problem. And we know it, they know we know it, and they lie to our face anyway. I don't think that's going to get any credibility with anybody. And I think it's devastating to the other things that they want. They want Ukraine funding, and they're telling us, no, you can't have border security. I don't think so.
Also, they refuse to fund. They claim Israel needs an emergency tranche of funding too, but they refuse to pass it unless they also give $60 billion to Ukraine. What's that all about?
Well, I mean, it's called blackmail. You don't get it unless you give us what we want. And you're going to see the Republicans call on. Republicans are going, oh, okay. And then the Democrats have a real problem, Vince. Joe Biden has to walk a tightrope, and this is a guy who can't even walk up the ramp to Air Force One.
Yeah.
But he's got one half of its party that's kind of old school Democrat that still, likes Israel and thinks genocide's bad, and the other half of the Democrat Party, which literally wants to murder the first half, and then it'll come and murder us. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to balance these two things. That half that likes Israel is not going to be happy about him holding it up.
Right. In some sense, it gets to your point. It's almost like they want to smuggle some Israel funding into a Ukraine package so that the anti-Israel crowd doesn't notice as much.
Well, and also to force people to vote for the Ukraine package. But, I think the Republicans are going to call people's bluffs. I think they're just going to say, no, we're not doing that. Well, we'll say that you hate Israel. Well, let's see if they believe it. How many Republicans do you see wearing one of those stupid keffiyehs around their neck?
No, nobody. But
because I see a lot of Democrats doing it.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, and to the credit of Speaker Mike Johnson, they did pass an Israel bill. They passed a standalone Israel bill. They did a pay for on it. They cut the 10 billion IRS agents that Joe Biden tried to hire to go after the middle class. And they put that before the Senate, and Chuck Schumer said, we're not doing that. We're not going to pass a standalone bill to fund Israel.
Oh, well, I guess Israel's out of luck.
Yeah,
but that ain't going to last long because Biden's going to have to roll over on it.
Can I ask you just kind of about the left, this infighting that you mentioned, that like there's some element of the Democrats who are pro-Israel. Joe Biden is trying to, as you point out, stumble on this tightrope. But there's a huge portion of the left that is not just anti-Israel, but straight up anti-Semitic. Straight up. And you're seeing it all across. I mean, we saw it on the campus of Yale this weekend as some goon tried to fly a Palestinian flag on a menorah. In case you're wondering if it's anti-Semitic or not, they're like straight up. They're trying to cut down symbols of Hanukkah on the Yale campus right now. So are you surprised that the left is surprised that they had this much anti-Semitism going on their own side?
Left isn't surprised. The left knew it. The people who are surprised are the people who weren't paying attention. Now, you and I knew it too because we deal with this stuff, and we knew exactly what these little semi-humans are thinking. And it's looking bad. I mean, you look at those college presidents who got up there. If somebody asks me, Kurt, is genocide, is advocating genocide a bad thing? Yes. Yeah. And then these guys, I mean, they have this like long, over-lawyered example or explanation. Well, maybe in context. What's the context where genocide's okay?
Yeah, it wasn't like the context. normally in these kinds of conversations, if you're mentioning context, it'd be like, oh, they were citing some historic genocide to warn you against how genocides occur or something like that. That's not what we're talking about. The example that Elise Stefanik gave was explicit, like, hey, if you get people on campus calling for the genocide of Jewish people, would that violate the school's code of conduct? And they were like, well, it would depend on the context. Does that stand up, you think?
Yeah, no, and nobody buys it. And here's the thing. I'm a free speech guy. If you want to walk around saying you support genocide, that's fine.
Sure.
You're alerting me that you're human garbage who needs to be flushed down the toilet.
Uh-huh.
But you can't pick and choose. No, you can't throw somebody off campus because he's fat phobic. Or because he believes that a man who's born a man can't become a woman through the power of wanting and mascara. And then tell me, oh, but, when it comes to the Jews, then the genocide's just fine, according to these jerks.
Right.
That doesn't work. But the thing is, a lot of them do feel that way. A lot of them do feel that if you're mean to militant fat people or bizarre transgender people, you're a terrible person. You should suffer horrible sanctions. But if you want to kill all the Jews, everything's cool. They're okay with that. See, the thing is, it's not like it's slipping through. They're actually in favor of murdering Jewish people.
No question. And you're right about their fascist tendency on all sorts of other speech. And then this comes along, and they're asking for some patience. They're asking for some context first before they impose sanctions.
We're playing by the new rules. Yeah. We don't do unilateral disarmament. If you want to go back to everybody gets to say whatever they want all the time, I'd like that, but not until you suffer, because until you pay a price for essentially criminalizing conservative or other unapproved speech, you're going to think it's okay and that you can do it again.
Yeah.
So we're not doing the old rules now. If you want to come up to me, I love it on Twitter because you've got these leftists who are going, well, that just shows conservatives don't believe in free speech, and the conservatives are like, you think you're going to talk me out of screwing you guys over by telling me I don't like free speech after you shafted us for the last couple of decades?
All right, so
not happening.
So the Kurt Schlichter rule is if they're going to shut down rational speech, we'll shut down irrational speech for now.
Oh, yeah. One set of rules. Choose carefully.
All right, Kurt Schlichter, thank you as always, sir. Really appreciate your time. Senator Chris Murphy, the Democrat, on NBC over the weekend, had this to say about the latest congressional battle of how to spend your money.
I think this is one of the most dangerous moments that I've ever faced in American politics, and I wish Republicans weren't holding Israel aid and aid to Ukraine hostage to the resolution of immigration reform.
Such bullcrap. Of course, it's the complete opposite. Democrats are holding our border hostage to giving $60 billion to Ukraine and $14 billion to Israel. The Republicans in the House already passed an Israel funding bill. They already passed it. They're not holding it hostage. They passed a standalone bill. You refuse to take it up in the Senate. What a scam. It's always scams from these people. Jerry's in Alexandria on line 4. Jerry, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Colonnese Show.
Hi, Vince. Yeah, I just like to point out that nobody ever talks about this, but the U.S. has a war looming on the horizon with China. That's going to be primarily a naval and an air engagement fight. Every $13 billion we give to for Ukraine or whatever like that, that's an aircraft carrier. About half that is a cruiser. And those are the assets that we will not have. This is a European fight, a war, Europe's fight, and it's great that we can do something. However, we got two oceans to defend. Germany, France, they have nothing. So those guys, they should be ponying up the bucks while we prepare for the war over Taiwan. And that's basically what I got to say.
Yeah, no, it's entirely reasonable. We've got all these massive direct threats to the homeland that they're not taking seriously. I mean, heck, we've got a full-blown invasion happening on our southern border right now. Our northern border is also wide open. We're also seeing plenty of invasion there, and there's no appetite whatsoever in Washington to address any of it. And meanwhile, when it comes to the military, our stockpiles are being depleted. We're exerting all these resources. We can't even meet our recruitment goals to fill the ranks of our military, and we're acting like we have enough headspace to give another $60 billion to Ukraine, which is only resulting in more death and more tragedy. You tell me how this makes sense. Add this up for me as Zelenskyy comes, hat in hand, back to Washington. At Joe Biden's invitation, Joe Biden thinks he's going to place some sort of moral blackmail on Congress. I hope they can find the intestinal fortitude to finally stand up to this. It's crazy what we're seeing. Coming up, Ilya Shapiro will be with us. He'll talk to us about the craziness that the left is putting on full display on America's college campuses as one major university president gets fired over the weekend. Well, they say she resigned, but you know how these things work. More ahead.